Mayor, your call. I think people are filtered in and they'll trickle in as time.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right, then let's get started, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us tonight. We're here today so that we can better understand exactly how our water system works, how our billing works. There have been a bunch of questions that have been raised recently, and we thought it would be best to have the experts come and answer questions and explain how our system works. So I just want to let everyone know that we have representatives with us tonight from Middlesex Water Company. And we have the Borough Administrator who will be talking about our water and billing systems here. And following this presentation, we'll have an opportunity to open up for public questions that we can answer. The meeting starts at 7 and we need to be completed by 8:30. Let me first take some time to introduce you to our Middlesex water team. We have Bob Fullager, who is the president, Utility Service Affiliates, and that's a subsidiary of Middlesex Water Company. We have Luis Perez Jimenez, Director of Operations for the Utility Service Affiliates. And we have Jan C. You can help me with that pronunciation, Jan. Jan is works with he's our licensed operator and utility service affiliate. So thank you all for joining us tonight. Also, as I mentioned, Terry Hover, who is our business administrator, is here. And I'm going to I'll turn things over to her, and she'll lead us into the discussion tonight. I also want to mention that in the background, we have Emma, who will be assisting with the meeting administration so things go smoothly. So welcome, Emma. All right, Terry, take it over.
Well, I believe we were going to give Council President a couple minutes to say hello.
Okay, great.
So Phil, I guess, as also the chair of the Public Works and Utilities Committee, you want to kind of launch us in?
Just very, very briefly, and certainly not with the experience that I've come to know over the years that Bob and Jan and Luis have. We've been working with them and discussing with them from starting with a meeting and a great sandwich lunch, which is probably 5 years ago, when the borough started to look very deeply into what the problems were with our water and sewer problems. We began to focus on it in a number of ways, primarily because we had noticed some problems with the rate structure. We noticed some problems with the fact that the system from everywhere from meters to the mains in the streets were beginning to deteriorate, having been put in many cases over 110 years ago. And then especially because of increased regulation through the DEP regarding water quality and water and sewer infrastructure, we were forced to start to look at things. And so we began to meet not with Middlesex, who was our water provider at the time, with regard to those issues. Many will recall we had a series of water main breaks that were being repaired all the time. And so we realized that we had to start working on actually managing our utility system, and we needed to start reinvesting. And for the last 5 years, I know that everybody kind of gets bored with me at times talking about stuff that's buried in the streets and water lines and water testing and meter testing and water quality when everybody else is talking about great events happening in town. But this is probably one of our most critical issues, is that the basic services that we have to provide, the provision of water and sewer is probably next to the streets, one of the most important things that the borough has to do. And as part of that, and in cooperation with Middlesex and with Bob and Jan especially, we began to realize that our system, because of its age, was we were losing water, both in the ability to track water that what we were mandated by, by the contract, but also by law, by DEP regulations to purchase a certain minimum amount of water to supply the borough in an over percentage in emergencies, but also that we were then losing it once it did enter into the system, or it was not being captured for charging for use. And that's why the borough over the last 5 years, especially in the last 2, has been very really focused on managing this system more effectively. And ultimately, we put in a very complicated our request for proposals from companies to manage our system in a variety of different ways, from overall management to just advice, and making sure that we were filing all the appropriate things with DEP. And ultimately, and I have the workbooks here in my library, which are about 700 pages long, that the borough had to go through. We had a number of meetings with all of the people submitting, and ultimately Middlesex was selected in part because of its familiarity already, but also with its overall familiarity with systems and the work that it has done in our neighboring communities. And therefore, we see them more in the role of not only professional advisors, but to some extent, I wouldn't call us partners, but we have a joint interest. The water flows through the system that's under our streets, and our water flows through that same system. And we have a very aligned interest in making sure that our system is working appropriately, and look forward to having somebody else preach that for a change instead of me. I don't get to talk about really good things like, skate parks and water parks and so on. As Councilman Hale once told me, he said, "You're the guy who actually climbed down into one of those sewers to look around." And I did years ago in an old brick beehive. The manholes, once you open those little things up, people, are shaped like beehive ovens that are 15 feet deep and made out of brick. And they're so old that the rungs that they set in them as ladders are rusted away. And I needed to know what they actually meant about that in order to be able to say, this is why it's so important. And I look forward to this presentation so people understand this system from start to finish. And thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Council President. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to our friends from Middlesex Water. Bob, I think you're kicking us off.
Yes, I am, Mayor. Thank you very much. Real quick, just on behalf of Middlesex Water Company and Utility Service Affiliates, we want to thank the borough for the trust and confidence that you've placed in us. Middlesex Water has been around since 1897. We're local. We all, live and work in the area. We've been involved with the borough since 2007 as the borough's licensed operator. I had the distinct honor of being the first licensed operator that was assigned to the borough back then. So the borough's, and in addition to being a wholesale customer, everyone in the borough is our neighbor. So, we take it seriously, and we do appreciate that. I think, one of the things that I like about the borough is, and I joke around with Terry, I've told her in the past, that it reminds me of Mayberry, but a sophisticated Mayberry. It really is. And I just, I think, I share the concern for the repairs and things. And the good thing is, we want you and the folks to know in the borough that you're not alone. We're all facing these challenges. And, we look forward to addressing them together. The folks that the other two folks that you see on the screen, Louis Perez Jimenez and Jan Tradoshik, in addition to Mike Rodriguez and Keith Husko, you'll see their pictures later on the slide. They're folks, they're the boots on the ground. I'm not going to go on and on. I could about their credentials, but suffice it to say that they're among our most talented and brightest people in the organization. So we're fully ready and willing to make the investment and our time and energy and talent to get this done. And we look forward to it.
Thank you. Who would like to go next?
Well, it's going to be me.
Luis, at this point?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, again, my name is Louis Perez Jimenez, and I've been with the company for the past 22 years. Before that, I was working for the city of Perth Amboy. I worked my first 13 years for the city of Perth Amboy. I still in charge of that system. But along with me in Highland Park, we have Jan, we have Keith, Huskot, and Mike Rodriguez. Jan is a licensed professional engineer. Mike Rodriguez is another engineer. He's working towards his professional engineering license. And I myself, I'm a professional engineer. Jan is the license operator, and in his absence, I also have the required licenses to operate the system. So in his absence, I'll be his backup. Keith, he's a USR1. He's right below the foreman's position, but he has many years of experience working on a water system. Next slide, John. We entered into a contract with an agreement with the Highland Park Borough for 10 years. That agreement was signed on July 1st, 2020, and it will expire in 2030. We are responsible for the operation of the water and wastewater system, which include about 38 miles of water main, 239 fire hydrants, 32 miles of sewer main, 650 sanitary manholes. The system serves about 13,000 residents or 3,350 properties. Like I mentioned before, the crew there, most of us are engineers and licensed operator, and we've been doing this for many years now. Next slide. Some of the services, all the services that we are to be provided on this contract include the meter reading and the testing of the meters. And let me say this about the meter reading. Not only we read the meter and test the meter, but right now we're working on the specifications, and hopefully the specifications are completed, and hopefully by next week, all the individuals are looking at the specifications to make sure that everything is correct and the way that we want it. That be completed, and specification will be sent out to different vendors for the replacement of all the residential meters in the borough. That include from 5/8 to 1-inch meters. The other service that we provide is water quality report, and this is the consumer's confidence report that we send every customer every year. We mailed this year. Next year, we're going to put it on the company's website. Another service is resiliency in the emergency response that we provide. any emergency, whether it's water or sewer, we are there to take care of whatever it is. We will be developing an asset management plan. This is one of the requirements under the Water Quality Accountability Act. One of the things that we're supposed to do, well, every system is supposed to do that. We will be also developing an asset inventory through GIS mapping services. We flush every hydrant every year. We inspect them. We do the sewer cleaning. And now there's another project that we're going to start probably in a week or two. And that includes the cleaning and TV inspections of every sewer main in the system. We already had the bids. The contractor and us were signing papers, and hopefully within the next 2 weeks, they're going to be starting the cleaning of the sewer mains. We do all the water testing for the system just to make sure that the system is always in compliance. We do test the system itself to make sure that that there's no lead services, and if there's lead services, we advise the administration and the property owner over there. The property owner owns the service line, just like in Perth Amboy, so they're responsible for that. So we have to advise them, and we also provide sustainability. We address the system water losses, and we get rid of the residuals. On the water system, on the meter reading project or meter replacement project, the meter that we are installing, we're going to be able to read them just by driving by. So it will be a lot easier to read the meters this time. We'll get 100% of the readings, and it would be a lot easier for the borough to prepare the bills and send to the customers. Next slide, Jan. Okay, so where do Highland Park gets the water? Well, all the water that is used in Highland Park comes from Middlesex Water Company. Middlesex Water Company gets the raw water from the Delaware and Rutland Canal. They pump the water from there to the treatment plant. It's treated, and once the water is treated, then they pump it to this different system. One of them is Highland Park. Next one. Oh, from here, I'll pass it to Jan, and Jan will continue the discussion.
Hey, thank you, Louis. Thank you, everyone, for letting us talk about this. So what I'm going to explain here is a simple infographic on how the water system, ultimately starting at the DNR canal and ending in the collection system, works with Highland Park. So if you look at the first spot where water in Highland Park starts the journey of the DNR canal. The DNR canal is a source of drinking water for several systems, including Middlesex Water Company. We pump the water from the DNR canal into our treatment plant. At that treatment plant, we obviously treat and disinfect the water, as Louis mentioned, and we make sure that it meets or exceeds all regulatory standards before pumping it into both our transmission mains and our distribution system at Middlesex Water. From there, the water enters Highland Park through two large meter pits, or what we refer to as interconnections. These connections meter the water flow coming into Highland Park, as well as regulate the pressure going into the borough to make sure that there's an adequate flow and pressure for both fire protection, and also making sure that there isn't too much pressure going into the customer homes within the borough. Once the water enters the distribution system is really the smaller water mains in some cases as small as 4-inch, in some cases as large as 20-inch. Within the borough, it goes into service lines. Those service lines connect the water main to the customer home. Now, those service lines are owned by the customers in Highland Park per the ordinance and are the responsibilities of the homeowners. And those service lines often are installed as part of the construction of a home or renovation. Those service lines, in some cases, do need maintenance, and that's something we assist the borough with in regards to making sure that we track the materials anytime we excavate the water main. Additionally, those materials of those service lines are tracked through an inventory, which we provide to the NJDEP. Once the water goes through the homes, by through the homes, I mean each resident of the borough uses the water, or each business uses the water, it ends up in the sewer collection system. The borough sewer collection system ultimately transmits or transfers the water through to the Edward J. Patterson Water Reclamation Facility at the Middlesex County Utilities Authority, where it's cleaned and returned back to the environment. So at the end of the day, water starts at the DNR canal in the environment, gets treated so that we can use it and customers can use it, goes through, is used, and then gets treated again so it can be returned to the environment. So it really is a cyclical process. So as mentioned before, the professional services that Middlesex Water and Utility Services affiliates provide the borough is to make sure that the water is tested and monitored at the CJO treatment plant, as well as within the distribution system, making sure that we provide those results to the DEP as required by law. And furthermore, taking those results and providing them annually to the customers. If you look at the image to the left of the screen, that is the water quality report that's distributed on an annual basis. That report is currently available on at the website that's listed on the screen. It's on Middlesex Water Company, or www.middlesexwater.com/Utility Service Affiliates Inc. Highland Park. In that report, you will see any relevant information regarding the water system. You will see information regarding testing results from the testing the regulatory testing that's done within the borough, and any other pertinent information. In addition to the water testing or the providing of water to the borough, we also provide meter reading services for the borough itself. With that, our personnel are responsible for going home to home or business to business within the borough and reading the meters. This is done to ensure that all meters are read accurately, and the results are provided to the borough in a timely manner so that bills can be distributed. In addition to that, the USA is responsible for meter testing and calibration. With regards to meter and testing and calibration, we make sure that the meters read accurately and provide the results required, or the proper reads for the water consumed. While one item to note is, while the USA Highland Park is responsible for resolving inquiries related to meter reading and consumption, we are not responsible for billing or collection matters. Those are done by the borough. Next thing I'm going to get into is the Water Quality Accountability Act. As Louis mentioned earlier, the Water Quality Accountability Act was enacted by the New Jersey State Legislature legislature to improve reliability, resilience, and sustainability, as well as enhance protection of public health. The requirements of the Water Quality Accountability Act are really separated into 4 distinct categories. The first is the creation and implementation of an asset management plan. Asset management plans allow a utility to realize what assets they have first. That's in some cases a significant challenge, knowing each little part of the system. But from there, looking at those parts, looking at establishing asset lives or expected life expectancies for each one of those parts, valves, water mains, hydrants, and then planning for the replacement of them so that the utility can be sustainable into the future, making sure that the utility can replace those assets before they fail, before you have a large amount of main breaks or hydrants fail and not be able to provide fire protection. So utility service affiliates is responsible for assisting the borough in the creation of this and implementation of this asset management plan. The next part is to routinely inspect, maintain, and repair valves and fire hydrants. All small diameter valves, which are 12 inches or less, are required to be inspected every 4 years, or correction, every valve smaller than 12 inches is required to be inspected every 4 years, and every valve greater than or 12 inches and greater is required to be inspected every 2 years. In addition to that, fire hydrants are to be flushed and inspected every year. That being said, this past year, we inspected all of the fire hydrants, flushed all of the fire hydrants, and inspected 1/2 of all the valves within the borough system. Next year, because next year is the compliance period for the small diameter valves, and large diameter valves, we will be inspecting the remainder of the valves. Additionally, the Water Quality Accountability Act requires the creation of a formal cybersecurity program, as well as a mitigation plan for Safe Water Drinking Act violations, if any are to occur. I'm happy to report that there are no Safe Drinking Water Act violations by the borough.
Hey, Jan, can I just jump in here a second? So, folks, I know that doesn't look like a lot, right? It's 4 little blurbs there on the screen, but there really is a lot of work that goes into that. I mentioned previously, Middlesex Water's been around since 1897. Well, the borough's been around just as long, and we both have water mains and infrastructure that are about that vintage. And these, when I refer to the challenges that we have, so these are some of the challenges that we all share, and it's not just Middlesex Water in Highland Park Borough. There's a lot of municipalities throughout the state, and everywhere you look. I mean, Edison's the same way. Woodbridge is the same way. You get into areas like Old Bridge and things that just throughout Middlesex County, the infrastructure is all about the same age. So these are challenges. They really are. And they can sound simple, just go out and inspect the valve, but the regulation requires that the valve be operated. And there was a long time, for many years, system operators would shy away from the big valves because they knew if something happened and it broke, it would be you've now created your own emergency. But the technology to operate the valves has gotten a lot better. We use computerized equipment that monitors the torque that's put on the valve, so it's less likely to break and create that homemade emergency, if you will. So that's made it a lot easier to do. But I know it looks simple on this graph, but there's really a lot of work that goes into this, and a lot of planning and a lot of preparation and mitigation that has to go through this, so that we do this and we do it safely, we do it right, and we don't shut off everybody's water.
Yes, thank you, Bob. Moving on to the next slide is, if you see here, we have our water service emergency phone number. If you have any water or sewer emergencies, please contact us at the number listed on the screen. If there are any general inquiries regarding to your bill or something else regarding your home or business, reach out to the borough at the number listed below. That is the 732-819-3788 number. And with that, that concludes our presentation. We will turn it back over to Terry. Thank you.
Thanks. And you need to stop sharing so I can share.
I'm working on it.
Okay.
Okay.
And before I launch in, I'm going to attempt to kind of connect from where Bob, Louis, and Jan left off and kind of drill into kind of the borough's roles and responsibility and some of the customer side, and also try to address some of the questions we've heard come up quite a bit. I was taking a glance at some of the attendees. Some of you I've spoken to before, so hopefully some of this will sound familiar and reflect some of your experience. But before I do that, I just want to thank the team at Middlesex Water. I've gotten to know them pretty well since I took on this position in 2017 and have a lot of respect, and I've learned a whole lot about water. And I think, Phil, I disagree. I think you have the interesting stuff. This is hard stuff, but it's really interesting and really, really important because water is everything. And frankly, in this whole country, we take it for granted that we have the quality of water that we do. And we've seen in recent years what can happen when systems aren't properly maintained and when water quality is jeopardized. So I actually like this stuff. I wish it wasn't so expensive and so hard, but I think it's really, really cool. So with that, I'm going to launch into my screen share, hopefully. Can you see my kind of cover slide there?
Yep.
Okay, great. Hold on, let me move you over. I'm looking at it on the wrong side. So that's just my landing slide, so if I screw something up. So to try to jump in, and there'll be some repeat, hopefully it starts to all connect, but the borough and the utility, the borough's utility, which is the water and sewer, our responsibilities are we own and maintain the fixed assets in our system, many of which you heard about, and that includes the water and sewer mains, the manholes, the hydrants and valves, and the water meters. And I parenthetically put 5/8 and 3/4 inch because a nuance in our ordinance, 1 inch or greater is actually customer owned. That's a separate issue that I know some of our customers are familiar with.
Hey, Terry, just to let you know, there's a spreadsheet up instead of the PowerPoint.
Oh, no. Well,
I know. I'm not sure what it is, but.
That is weird. I'm sorry you just got a glimpse at our meter reading report there. So that's very appropriate for this call. Sorry, I don't know why that happened. Thank you, Emma. Nobody else was telling me.
It's back.
Yay. Okay. I think when I moved it to my other screen, it screwed something up. So apologies. So you can now see what I was talking about. We have to oversee the operations and maintenance of the system. And as was indicated, effective July 1st, Middlesex Water, their subsidiary USA Highland Park, was awarded that 10-year contract to do that work for us. But we still have to do our part to oversee the contract and make joint decisions about what the priorities need to be. And I say we, meaning myself, but obviously the governing body ultimately makes those decisions. We have to meet the regulatory requirements. Again, we have our licensed operators who really know this, and they advise us on how to do that and how to stay compliant. But again, we have to maintain the permits. We have to do all of that. Also, it's the responsibility is the owner of the system. And we have to fund the system, the operations, the capital programs. And that's going to get into some of my presentation because that's a little bit where the baton is handed off in terms of, real who does what. And that means rate setting. The governing body establishes the rates that are charged for the water that is consumed. We have to issue the quarterly bills that go out that most of our customers are familiar with. And then we have to borrow money in the form of notes and bonds to fund our capital programs. And we have to pay that back. Just to give you a quick glimpse, what are some of our primary expenses? And those of you who've seen my budget presentations on an annual basis, some of this will look familiar, but a big component of our budget is purchasing water. We also have to process that sewage that Jan had referred to in that diagram, and those are charges that we have to pay. And then I've kind of lumped general operations, but that includes, prior to our contract, staffing costs, costs for our licensed operator contract, now our operations and maintenance contract, our administrative costs, my time, the tax office time, to keep all the functions rolling, insurance and fringe benefits. I'm kind of lumping all of that in. Emergency repairs, and then we have capital and debt service that we have to pay back. But essentially the first two items is about 60% of our budget. I mean, that's where a lot of that goes. And to be very plain, the water bills that we send out fund this work. That's how our budget is structured, that the rates we set and our anticipated rents that we collect fund all of the things that need to get done. So just to talk a little, I'm trying to drill down an overview of the quarterly billing. As indicated, we actually have closer to 3,400 accounts since your slide, guys. I just looked at it today because we've added some new properties, as some of you may be familiar. And then just to remind everybody, our bill cycle, we issue bills in March, June, September, and December. So bills will be rolling out shortly. And the readings are taken in the month prior, during the roughly 4 weeks prior to issuing the bills. And we calculate the bills based on the usage and then the rate cycle that I have kind of presented here on our screen. I grabbed this right off of our website, so anybody who wants to find it and look at it. It's also on the back of the bill that's mailed out. But the real basics of how we calculate the bill, we get the readings back from the field. We upload them into our financial software system that allows us to do the bills. We evaluate the readings to make sure everything looks accurate, or where we have a question, we'll go back out and do a reread. And then essentially to calculate the reading, the usage for that quarter, we take the current reading, the prior reading, and we subtract that from the current reading, and the difference is the usage, and we measure in cubic feet in the borough. And then we multiply that against our rate. And that's all done by our software, but that's essentially what happens. And I just want to point out that the rate structure, you can see this is both, we have a charge for water and a charge for sewer. It's all based on water consumption that's measured by the meter in the home or the business. And I should probably have let these guys explain it, but I'm explaining it in the way that I have come to understand it. And we do have a tiered structure based on consumption by the quarter. So for example, the typical households will usually find themselves in that 1,000 to 3,499 cubic feet range. And that's the rate that's charged to those property, but there are people who use much less water, and there's a flat charge rate that's in our ordinance. And then those who use 3,500 cubic feet and up have a different rate. I will tell you the rate structure is something that we've been meaning to look at, because I can tell from some of my own looking around, it's not typical, but there's more work to come, and we don't envision doing that kind of tomorrow, but that's something we may look at. And I will also mention, because I know it's come up in discussions with residents, there was a rate increase authorized in 2019 that was effective the first quarter of this year. So that's also something to keep in mind as I talk about my next slide. Why is my bill so high? Because unfortunately, most of my opportunities to interact with our customers are when there's a perceived problem or a high bill. And that's when they call. We don't get a lot of calls like my bill seems too low. It's just not human nature. But we take every call and we treat each one on a case by case as their unique situation, and we have to look at the facts we've got in front of us. But one of the things that we always try to do is we look at the usage for that quarter as opposed to the dollar value when we're comparing it to prior, because as I said, the rates can go up. So you always have to kind of look at the usage. So the first thing I'll do is if someone says, why is my bill so high? I go, let me take a look. I'm going to look at your usage, and I'll use third quarter, since that's the most recent one that went out, of 2020, and I compare it to third quarter of 2019. And very often they look fairly within a reasonable percentage of each other, and then if that looks like the case, then that'll give me more confidence that the reading's accurate. That said, if that doesn't pan out, if we don't feel that way, we can look, and I should mention, the reason you want to look at the quarter prior is because there can be seasonal variations. Third quarter in particular, there's a lot of more outdoor landscaping, watering, pools, you name it. So that's one reason you'd want to compare your third quarter from one year to the third quarter prior. But I also look at the second quarter. You want to look at the history. You want to, if the usage does seem high, we want to reread the meter for accuracy. Because we have a lot of manually read meters, which basically, some of you have learned this already, but there are exterior readouts, a little remote on the outside of the house that's connected to the meter inside the house, that the service folks, when they're coming around taking the readings, they're manually punching in that meter reading, and there can be errors. So that's something that we would want to verify. Having COVID, unfortunately, for so long now, we haven't been able to come in and do internal readings as much as we've wanted to. We've had to suspend most of that. However, what we've been doing is asking customers to send us photos of their meter as a way to verify our readings. And so that's something we would do. And then if the meter reading that we have in our system appears to reflect the meter reading on the actual meter, we'd want to try to look and see if there are any leaks. And I'm going to have a separate slide to talk about what I mean by that. But essentially, we want to make sure there's no water being lost that's coming through the meter in the house that's unaccounted for. Similar to how, when Councilman George mentioned, we were seeing water we were buying from Middlesex water that we weren't billing ourselves. And that's lost in the system that we're looking to figure out where those, are they in service lines? Are they mains? What have you? Are they meter accuracy issues? So similarly, that's what the customer needs to do. And again, unfortunately, due to the coronavirus pandemic, we haven't been able to do our customer courtesy leak inspections, but we've been trying to coach folks through how to try to identify these leaks in their system. I'll get to my other slide. I probably spend more time. Another thing I know, because this meeting came up following the third quarter cycle, there was generally higher use. We compared our third quarter from this year in terms of what we purchased from Middlesex Water from 2019, it was up. And I strongly feel a lot of that can be attributed to COVID-19 and the stay-at-home orders and people working from home, not going to school. Think of all the additional toilet flushings and laundry batches everybody's doing, and gardening projects they've always been meaning to get to, and hot tubs that were installed. All of those examples are things I've talked to customers about when they called me about their bill. So these are all things that people go, oh yeah, that's true. That's a little different this year. And then again, as I mentioned earlier, these seasonal variations, our third quarter tends to be a little higher because it includes a lot of those warmer summer months where people who have watering systems and other things, they're working. So again, it's not to say this is the end all be all, but these are kind of, I just trying to walk through how we would evaluate a bill that just seems out of character with a home. And then I'll touch on, so how can I tell if I have a leak? What we try to coach people to do is, if you turn off all the faucets and all your appliances that may use water, and then hopefully you now know where your meter is. It's in your basement, probably in the darkest corner of your basement, if it's like mine. And you want to take note of the reading that's on there. And there's a little dial. In some cases, there's different kinds of meters, so I'm being a little non-specific. Some have a little dial that moves. Some of them are digital readouts, depends on the age. But then you want to see if it's moving and you think you've turned everything off, there's something going on. There's something drawing water through the system. If you don't, what you can also do is you can take note of the reading and then go to bed, maybe do it overnight or something like that. Wait 20, 30 minutes, whatever, and go back and check. And if it looks like there's been an increase in usage from when you took note of the reading and after, and then maybe something's going on. That's the thing. The common culprits that from working with folks and my own experience, frankly, was running toilets, leaking hoses, especially when they're outside and they're out of sight, out of mind. A leaking hose or faucet or a toilet can add up very quickly. And especially if you were away from your home and it was running for 2 weeks while you're away, those are all things that can happen. And I've talked to customers where that's happened. But again, these problems, one of the challenges I'm finding in trying to coach people through, or people brought in plumbers, the problems can be intermittent, like when a leaky toilet doesn't necessarily run all the time if the flapper or other parts are failing, and that when you happen to go down and do that check, if the problem's not happening, you're not going to see a leak. But if someone before going to bed used the bathroom, went to sleep, and it was running all night or into the next day, so these problems can be intermittent. So you may need to do this check a few times if we have an unexplained problem. And then the last thing is if it's really something that we're not, the ultimate recourse would be to test the meter and for accuracy, as was indicated earlier, which we've done for many people, to see if there is a meter failure. I'll tell you, it's been very rare that that's occurred, but it's not, I can't say it would never happen. So that's kind of the backstop here. But basically, the way I've come to understand meters is the water goes through it and it just ticks, 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 and it adds it up. And that reading on that meter is the total amount of water that's passed through it in its history, unless it's been reset for some reason. So that's just kind of my overview of how can I tell if I have a leak. One thing I promised the mayor was we would get some of these resources up on our website, and I will do that for sure. So I just wanted to know, you to know that that's forthcoming. And I just wanted to throw this up on the screen. Jan had indicated it in his remarks. And this is kind of my last slide, and I frankly was struggling with how to weave it in, so I'm just going to throw it at you. I stole this graphic from some other place, but it's accurate for the borough. And even though I would argue this picture is not exactly, it doesn't exactly look like Highland Park. However, the gist of it is you can see that water main coming down the street, the borough's responsibility. We own it. The service line that connects that main to the home, according to our ordinance, that's owned by the customer. And so the leaks that are between the main and the home, or any repairs that need to be done to that curb stop or the service line, are the responsibility of the homeowners or the property owner. I will say just this year, we had a situation where there was what we thought was a water main break, and it turned out to be a leak on the customer side. And we had to have that addressed and work with the homeowner through that process. So it is it's not something that they give you in the handbook when you purchase a house in Highland Park. And I can tell you that personally, because I didn't really fully appreciate this point until I've gotten more steeped in it. So this is also some education we want to do for residents to know, so that they are more aware and can be prepared should an issue arise on their service line. And also included is the sewer line going out of the house. It's not in this photo, but it's a similar concept. That is also the responsibility of the property owner. So I just didn't want to lose this opportunity to try to start getting the word out about that. I think that I just had a who you're going to call kind of slide. Again, as Jan indicated, we have our tax office, which is also our utility billing and questions and the office du jour, and their contact information is up there. We do have payment options. I know that's just a question I get a lot. because of COVID and how can I get my payments. So I just want to make sure you're aware we have online payment available. We do have a drop box out front. We do take mail, but please mail it to 221 South 5th Avenue and not the PO box, because we've discontinued that and it's continuously confounding people, like why are their mails not getting to us on time. So we've been trying to message that as broadly as I can. And then in person, but right now we are very strict and it's by appointment only. We're limiting it primarily to those who have a need to hand deliver certified funds and things of that nature where they can't leave it in the Dropbox. And then again, I'm the Borough Administrator, Terry Jover. My contact information is up there. And I would urge you to try if you've not tried the tax office first, please start there. And if we can't resolve it, or if you have questions and you want to talk to me, I'm always willing to do so. I do try to get back to people as quickly as I can. I'm not perfect, so you may have to follow up once or twice, but I really do learn a lot from talking to the customers, and we do want to work through any issues that arise. So Mayor, with that, that is my final. Hopefully I didn't go on too long, I didn't really look. But I don't know if you or Phil had any other questions for us before we go into the public session.
So first of all, I want to thank Council President Phil George, our Borough Administrator, and the folks from Middlesex Water for tackling this major problem that we have had on an ongoing basis for years now, and finding a solution that professionalizes our water department and makes the ancient system that we have something that is on the forefront of our minds as we start planning for a future here in Highland Park. I just want to clarify that to everyone on the call, that when we talk about the utility, we're talking about the infrastructure, the ancient infrastructure, and that belongs to Highland Park. So we are the utility. We buy our water from Middlesex Water. And I want that to be clear to everyone on this call. A year or two, time is so hard to figure these days, but in the not too distant past, the governing body had to wrestle with how do we move forward with this system that we have. And how do we start planning for our future? And also, how do we now accommodate the increased number of reports and requirements that we have from the DEP on water systems? And I just want to congratulate Phil and his committee and Terry and our folks from Middlesex Water in finding ways for us to work towards the greater needs of our water system and keeping our water clean and safe. I believe we have some of the cleanest drinking water in the state of New Jersey. So I think that's a good thing for our residents. All right, so we will now move into our open question section. I do have my Open Public Meetings Act message that I have to read off before we go into this. So as we enter into the public comment question portion of this meeting, I would like to remind everyone that I preside over this meeting, and I may interrupt, warn, or terminate a participant's statement or participation in the virtual meeting if the participant's statement does not adhere to the time allotted to each participant for public comment, or if the statement is abusive, obscene, or irrelevant. We will use the same format as in council meetings, 3 minutes per person, so that we give as many people as possible a chance to speak. Emma, who is in the background, I call her the wizard, and she will time each speaker and give them a 30-second warning before calling their time. So at this point, I'd like to ask anyone who would like to ask a question to raise their hand by pressing *9 on their phone, or using the raise hand function on the Zoom platform.
All right, Mayor, do you want me to pick the first hand I see?
Yes, please, let's get started.
I think I see someone I know, Dan Halbin and Julie Katz. Could you just state your name and address just to confirm it's you and
Yeah. Hi, can you hear me?
yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, this is Dan Halbin at 312 Lawrence Avenue.
Hi.
Basically since the last year, I've noticed the rates of actual usage, not just the price, has doubled on my sewer bills. I should, note that, prior to, I'd say like last December, the bills were saying that we were using maybe in the 2,000 gallons per quarter, roughly that range. And it's incrementally gone up from maybe like 500 over our usual to now thousands over our usual usage. I know that you mentioned, Terry, that, hey, people have been working from home. My wife and I have been not been working from home since June, and it hasn't had any impact on our usage rates. We've also installed new appliances that are, I would assume, more water efficient since, a year ago. Last summer, I think our water usage was probably around 3,000 gallons, and now we're being billed for about 6,000 gallons. And, we're a household of 2 people. I've compared our bills to our neighbors' bills who have way more people, 3 or 4 people in their households, and they're not using nearly as much water and sewer as us. We've had plumbers come here and tell us that we don't have any leaks. We've had our water meter replaced and been told that our water meter that was taken out was not faulty. And I know from the plumbers that have been here and, helped us with the meter and with other things, have told us that we're not the only household that's saying, our usage has gone up, mysteriously. I guess my question is, what is our next move to figure out what is wrong with our water and sewer usage? If we've had people tell us there's no leaks, we can say for sure we've been, doing our routines have gone back to normal since June, so we're not home more. How do we figure out why we're using so much more water? Is it possible that it's a systematic issue if it's not just my household that's having this issue? That's it.
Okay, so I'm not sure if this is a borough administrator question or a Middlesex water question. I'm going to ask you, Terry, to let us know who you think would be best.
Well, I guess, I wish I could do my real time, like what I would normally do. I start pulling up your account and I try to look it through. Want to know when looks like we replaced the meter in November.
Yeah.
So I did look you up real quick. And so but that's, we don't have the benefit of a quarter on a new meter. So that would be the first thing I would do, is try to see if there's been an appreciable difference, but I can't do that at this point. So I don't know. I guess I know what I would say, but I do have some people who know a whole lot more than I do about this. I would probably call Jan or Louis and say, have we exhausted all the possibilities here? What do you recommend? So if it's okay, I'd like to ask them for some backup on this one.
I'll jump in. Dan, hi, Bob Fulger from Middlesex Water and Utility Service Affiliates. Did I hear you correctly when you said you had the meter tested, or we tested it?
Yes, we had a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if they were at the Borough or Middlesex Water, but they came. They took out our old meter. They put in a new one. They tested it there and showed that there were no leaks. They went and tested the old meter and said that it wasn't faulty. So that's where we're at.
Okay, because that's usually one of the things that we would do. Our testing facilities are certified by New Jersey Division of Weights and Measures. So you can have some confidence in the test results. Basically, if the if the meter is accurate, and the reads are accurate, the water's going through the meter. So it's really, I'm not sure. I know you say you have plumbers come in and look. I don't know. Maybe it's, as Terry said, on the toilet, sometimes the flapper, I know I had it happen to mine a couple years ago. It would, depending on who flushed the toilet, it would either seat properly and stop running, or it wouldn't seat properly. And I think my youngest son was pretty, aggressive about flushing it, and that would kind of like jostle it, and it wouldn't sit properly, so it would constantly run.
Bob, I appreciate I appreciate that, but would something like that result in anywhere from 50 to 100% extra usage of water in a quarter? That's
the toilet leak will add a lot. Yes, your bill will easily double with a toilet leak.
I'll just, and I know it's just anecdotal, so it doesn't, I know it only goes so far, but I personally have gone through that with a third floor bathroom that after my mom left, I was just telling the mayor the story, and I didn't go up there for 2 or 3 weeks after, and my bill, I don't know that it doubled, but I was like, what's going on? And I went up there and I saw it was running. So the leaks do add up. I've had that. One thing I'd also mention, and it doesn't apply in your case, but one of the challenges I've had this with some of our older residents too, who may be hearing impaired. They don't hear sometimes the leaks are running until it's, get caught on the thing. So I know that's not a satisfying answer. I guess, Dan, what I'd like to do, because I think we may have exhausted our brainstorm on the Zoom, you have my contact. Let's talk. We also did just get I have your reading because we did a recent reading when we swapped out, but I don't have anything on the new meter, so we could certainly try to do an interim read before the next bill to see if and you can also check the usage as the quarter goes on, to see what might be going on. But can we agree to follow up after? I don't know that I can help you on the fly any more than this.
Yeah, that's fine, Terry. I also appreciate that. I guess one of my questions was whether there was a systematic reason why this might be happening, and I guess you'll hear from other residents if they have a similar experience. But if there's a possibility that something wrong with the main lines or those connections between the main line and a house can cause so these kind of events to happen at a larger scale beyond just my individual house. Sorry, Bob.
Dan, that's okay, no problem. I'll jump in on that one. So anything that happens out in the street in the water mains, the borough's water mains, or on the service pipe from the main into your house, anything that happens before the meter isn't going to show up on your meter. It's going to make your lawn wet and soupy. It's going to freeze in the road or something like that, but it's not going to show up on your water bill. Even though that is your leak to repair, if it during the service, you're not paying for that water that's leaking because it's before the meter.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All righty, let's go to our, looks like Dan lowered his hand for me. It looks like Robin Lowenstein is up next. Can you just confirm your name and your address, please?
Yes, my name is Robin Lowenstein. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I live at 116 South 4th Avenue, and my story is very similar to Dan's, and I have to say that I have been speaking to many, many, many residents who are all singing the same song. Not the bill, the bill in the end, but the usage from a quarter in 2019 to the same quarter 2020, or a quarter in 2018 to the same quarter 2019, whatever it is, has quadrupled. The usage has quadrupled. And we are talking about people who will tell you straight up, there is no leak. My meter tested as working. There has been no change in activity. The same number of people are home doing the same exact things. It's not COVID related. And we're stuck with this situation of the family's word against the word of the meter. So it seems obvious, well, if the meter was tested and it tested out fine, and the man from Middlesex Water who I ran into told me that almost all of them have, there's only a couple that tested out as faulty. Most of them all tested out as fine. And yet people are seeing 4 times, 5 times the usage from previous years, same quarter, with no change in behavior, no change in anything. And to shrug it off and say, well, the meters were tested and the meters calculate the water, and yet so many people are having this same problem. And then when you call, instead of, like Terry gave that little example about how to look if the meter is running, and a lot of us know that, but that's not what the people say when you call. They say, oh, you must have a leak, call a plumber. Well, the expense of calling a plumber when you can look to see if the little dial's turning, and I will tell you, if you have a leaky toilet, that little dial's turning. If you even have a drip in your bathtub, because several years ago I went through this, if you even have the slightest little drip, that dial is turning. So anybody who can see the difference between a moving dial and a not moving dial can tell you, or not moving numbers, can tell you they have no leak. And everybody I've talked to says, yeah, we were told call a plumber. Yeah, we were told you have a leak. I mean, everybody who calls is being told the same thing. Then we said, we're putting this bill into dispute. It's 4 times what it was before. And the answer we got was there's no such thing as putting the bill in dispute. And if you don't pay the bill, like literally beg, borrow, or steal, because if you don't come up with that astronomical money to pay that bill, your house will be sent to tax
30
sale.
seconds.
So we were told by several attorneys, you don't want your house going to tax sale, beg, borrow, and steal, but somehow come up with that money. So my question is, in a time of COVID, why the borough can't work some kind of plan for people who have a dispute, and this theme of person after person having incredible usage with no change in behavior just doesn't seem to make sense.
Okay, thank you, Robin. Terry, do you want to update everyone on what you?
Sure. I guess I have a couple of things. It's kind of, I'm not sure I'll go in the right order, but kind of backwards thought process. There was an executive order from Governor Murphy, I believe it was Executive Order 190, that just with respect to COVID, it doesn't specifically call out tax sale, but in effect, it makes, we cannot put any properties into tax sale this year due to the COVID emergency.
Terry, can I still be heard? Can you still hear my voice?
Yeah, but can I just get through my points? And then
but that's the opposite of what you told my husband.
The executive order didn't come until October 15th. I'm sure I spoke to him.
When did you? Wait a second, but that's not fair, because we had to come up with a.
Robin, you had your chance to ask a question. Now let the borough administrator answer it.
So I just muted you because I need to get my points across. I will go back. The executive order came on October 15th, and I don't know, it probably came to my attention within a few days of that. And we kind of scrambled because there was no guidance that came along with it for how municipalities, because it was silent on the question of tax sale. It just said no penalties. So we weren't sure. So we had to get our attorney's opinion, et cetera, et cetera. So effective that date, that's when we got our attorney's opinion on how to handle it. That's when that's how we handled that matter. I was handed it out of the blue, and we had to make it work. The other matter with respect to that executive order, probably the thing that got more headlines was the fact that water service will not be shut off to homes due to non-payment. And I will tell you, while that's a significant thing for some systems, for the borough, that we do not have that policy. So that was not particularly consequential for us. We don't shut off water unless there's an emergency with respect to water service, like there's a leak going all over the place. That's just not been our policy, although we have the authority to do so, except for now with this executive order. So that's kind of wanted to put that out there because I thought that might be a concern that some folks may have. It's a real challenge what Robin and Dan presented in terms of the what do you do when a meter tests accurately? I mean, we have to run a system. We have bills to pay. I showed you some of those expenses. We're buying that water from Middlesex Water, and because it's being measured and metered from that end. So if we don't collect, if our equipment is accurate and we don't collect, we're shortchanging the rest of the system and we jeopardize our solvency. So this is the challenge. We do try to work with people, but we don't have the ability. There are rules about payment and interest charges and things like that the state governs that we have to go by. So unlike like a credit card company or another kind of bill where you might be able to negotiate, waive interest, waive fees, we are very limited by law, and our tax collector has got a certification that she has to maintain. She has to apply the rules evenly and fairly. But we do try to work with people where we can. And I sympathize, but that the flip side is if our equipment appears to be accurate and the water went through the meter, we have to bill for it because that's how we fund our system. And so I don't know how we're going to solve this on this Zoom, but that's the reality. And the truth is, while we've gotten some calls, and it's not, we do get that every quarter for one reason or another. We have about 3,500 or 3,400, whatever I said before, and it hasn't been everybody. So there's a dynamic going on, and I don't know if it's our age of our home and the plumbing in the homes. But anyway, I guess, Mayor, did I cover the points on that? I should unmute.
The
Robin.
one thing I do want to emphasize is the change in direction from the water tax collection office that you and I talked about earlier today. Before we start asking residents to hire a plumber, there are some simple tests that they can do, and we can also get people out to read the meters and check them for the residents. So
right, or if we can't enter the building, we can accept either. They can even call in a number. I'll trust people if it looks reasonable, So right. Or just take a snapshot and email it in. Those are things that we can do in the interim until we can do things. But it is a challenge. I guess I'd be curious since we have Middlesex Water, do you have this situation throughout your system in other places? Can this happens?
I can take that, Terry. Yeah, it's not uncommon for, as I mentioned to Dan, when I used to do these types of investigations, we would suggest to the customers that they can, if they're familiar enough with it, you can take the lid off the toilet tank, and you can put a couple drops of food coloring in there, put the lid back on, and don't use the toilet. And as you said, 20 or 30 minutes later, if you go back and look and you see the blue dye or green or whatever food coloring you use in the bowl, the toilet bowl, it's leaking. So it's not a tight seal. Again, testing the meter. I'll share. It's out there, and the meter folks know this. The older style meters. They call them the nutating disc. They actually slow down when they get older. That's why the regulations on some of the utilities, those that are regulated by the Board of Public Utilities, requires meters to be changed more frequently and more often because they know they slow down over time.
And slowing down, Bob, does that mean it would be measuring more usage or less usage?
Less, yeah. The customer ends up getting free water, basically. So it's not always the case, but most often the meters, we see that the older meters are running slow. So that it's not registering all the water that's going into the house. So, it's, again, in my experience, it's usually not the dripping faucet, because people see that. It's, it's the garden. And we have had the people with the garden hose that's, they forget and leave it on, and it runs for a day. And, I know myself, seasonally, I use a lot more water outside. But really it always seems like it's that the toilet that's the culprit. I know myself, if I hadn't heard it, if I hadn't walked past the bathroom, the one time I heard I could actually hear it. It filled up and stopped. It was kind of like a shh, like that. And then I probably wouldn't have known it until I got the bill from, I have New Jersey American where I am. I wouldn't have known it until I got their bill if I hadn't heard it, because it's not something that you catch all the time. It doesn't do it constantly.
Thank you. Terry, let's go on to the next person.
It looks like I have David Copperman. Could you please state your name and address, please?
Hi, David Copperman, 120 Hill Street. Thank you. Phil, I just want to say I don't find stuff under the ground boring, but I'm sure nobody calls up and says, "Hey, turn on the tap and the water ran." So I get that.
David, I simply meant that at every meeting when I'm preaching water and sewer infrastructure and talking about the sewers and the water mains, everybody, the rest of the council stare at me because they're talking about parks and recreation and activities and sports and this is what I get. I get the dirty job quite literally.
That's right. They'll be the first to call when they turn on the tap and the water doesn't run. So, yeah. I have a broader couple of questions. It's interesting, I suppose, in quotes, to hear how ancient the water system is locally. Is there something in the way of an executive summary that's a little bit more detailed than what we've heard today about the state of the system and the sorts of issues that we're facing, how pressing they are? And a related question then is, how does the state of the system figure into the projected plans for downtown redevelopment, which would involve about a 10% increase in the number of accounts, and this in a very concentrated area, basically 2 blocks on Raritan Avenue, the kind of surge and flow situation that we simply don't have there at the moment in this very old system.
Can I jump first and then I'll punt it if you want, Mayor? I'm proud of myself. I have some things I can say on this one. To your first question, I won't get into, I am not capable, but I think one of the things I'll let the folks in Middlesex Water speak to kind of their assessment of the system, but a few things that are encouraging about our system. Our whole water system was relined, cleaned and lined, I guess in the late 90s, I'm guessing, which is a really good thing. That's something that was a good investment that we made. So that's something despite the age of some of our mains and so forth. So that's just something we kind of skipped over that there has been reinvestment in the system over time. But one of the big tasks that was what Bob was alluding to on that very basic looking slide with like 3 bullets is the condition assessment work that we're going to be doing for our water system through this contract with Middlesex Water. It was built in to our kind of as an initial kind of capital improvement that we needed to do, which is fundamental to the asset management plan, but also we need in order to make and prioritize which mains, which projects, what have you. And that's a very high and kind of upfront priority for our new arrangement with Middlesex Water Company. And that hopefully, I would have rather been having this meeting about kind of, we did that and this is what we found, and we will have that meeting, but I hope, but that's a big task that we do. And I will say, you're absolutely right to raise the question about downtown redevelopment and our capacity, both in terms of how much water do we actually have the allocation for the amount of water we need to support downtown redevelopment, as well as the infrastructure. And we'll have to build that in to our analysis for what we can support downtown. And this is something that Jan has really beat into me over the years, is that he needs to be in the loop when we're making these decisions. And I was saying, we're doing some redevelopment planning. So you're absolutely right. I don't know that we're prepared to say, what would it take to support whatever the redevelopment plans are, but we need to be on a parallel track as we identify what we are aspiring to. We need to have a plan for how that infrastructure is going to be brought up to date. And some of that can be done if with the development community, we can work deals and try to have that built into our redevelopment planning. And that's something our redevelopment attorney is very knowledgeable about how.
Okay.
So anyway, I hope I answered some of it. I don't know if the guys want to pop in with any more kind of
I just
engineering.
want to add one thing, and then Phil, I'm gonna turn it to you. There have been instances in the past where we've had new development go up, particularly in the River Road area of town, where as part of the negotiations with the developers, there were some infrastructure improvements and lines built into the agreements with those developments, and it's not atypical for that to happen. Phil, you wanted to add something?
Yes, I just wanted to tell David what you just said, Mayor, and what Terry has said. Redevelopment, economic development originally, or well, I can't say originally, but when this process started, was under me, and then it was under Susie Welkowitz, God bless her, and now Matt Hale. And we've always been aware of that. And as the mayor said, it's built into the redevelopment. But you asked an earlier question about, is there some mapping of what the system itself is? And I remember, and Bob and Jan, maybe you could remind it. I remember one of the meetings we had where we asked that question with you, and there was an older map when we talked about updating it with GIS through the county. There is a partial older map of a lot of the facilities, including, and to me it looked like a schematic of a radio, diagram, but it labeled the size of a number of mains, and it didn't cover everywhere, but it did cover a lot of the town. I think it was very old, probably from the 50s or 60s, but it did carry a lot of that information. So we have a partial on that, but one of the goals has been with the new asset managing is to get that mapped so we know everything that's under the ground that we need to worry about.
I appreciate that. I hope that as that comes into full picture, that you publicize the availability of that information. Yeah, I do find it interesting and important. And as far as the redevelopment plans, Mayor, I just have to contrast what you're looking at versus what we've done previously. The work that was done, say, up the hill along the Amtrak line and so forth was effectively greenfield compared to backfitting 300 plus new, 350 new units, depending on final plans, into a very concentrated area where you already have pretty intense development. It's really apples and oranges, and that simply has to be pointed out. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Mayor, I just want to point out is 823, the challenge is there's a lot to answer with some of these questions. So I don't know how you want to handle, we have a number of hands still up. I just, before we get into
So let's get as many people in as we can, and people on the panel, let's try to keep our answers very brief but concise and accurate as they have been. Then let's get to the 8:30 point, and if somebody has not had a question answered, we could do what we've done in previous meetings where we have people submit their questions to us and we can publicly answer them in some way.
Okay, I'm getting swept away myself, so I just felt I should raise that issue. Next up we have Max. You could just please say your name and your address.
My name is Max Wazotsky. I live at 54 North 7th Avenue in Highland Park. I lived in this home for over 50 years. There were just the two of us. We were senior citizens, very senior citizens. Our kids are married and moved away. There were just the two of us. We have no pool, no sprinkler system, no leaks, no drips, no puddles inside or outside the house, no water stains anywhere. Our toilet is not leaking. We have no outdoor faucet, nothing going. We have not changed anything over the last number of years, our lifestyle or people in the house or outside the house. Our water bills over the many years averaged in the past about $100 a quarter, more or less. This year in June, our water bill was $188. That's almost double what it's been traditionally. In September, our bill came in, it is at $438. That is over 4 times the normal bill. We're in the middle of a pandemic. There are only 2 of us in the house. We have never left the house. No one is coming into the house. Nothing has changed, but our bills have suddenly skyrocketed. I fully expect next bill to come in probably over $1,000, which is insane. We called the Borough Hall, we called the water company, we had our meters checked. There was no water leaking anywhere in our house. I know when the toilets are leaking, there's nothing happening. And yet we've got no help from anyone. I don't know what in the world is going on here, but there is certainly a major problem somewhere, not in my house, but yet I'm paying the price for it. This situation is intolerable, and I sure hope you find a problem and fix it fast. This whole situation is insane, and it is not due to the individual homeowners. Thank you.
Okay, so Terry, you have the address on that house?
Yep. And Max, I'm sorry, I lost your last name already, but you have my contact, and I'd ask you to reach out if you have any questions. I tried to look while you're talking, but it's too hard to juggle the 2 jobs. But we can talk further.
Okay, and I could give you Max's last name, Terry.
Thank you. I got the address. That's all I need to look at.
Okay, okay.
Looks like Josephine Gayamo is up next. State your name and address.
Yes, my name is Josephine Giamo. That's Giaimo. I live at 123 Johnson Street on the south side. You know, I have a number of questions, but I guess I'll try to keep it limited here, obviously. I'm just wondering what the current process is that the town is using as a model for analyzing, isolating, and resolving water and sewer related problems like the ones we've been hearing. And I'm wondering how we can work together to improve that process, because what I'm hearing is that people are having problems and the root cause of the problem is not being identified. So I'm hoping that we can have some kind of dialogue to change that so that there's more of a partnership and joint ownership to get to the root cause. And I guess as a kind of a second related question is, I saw on one of Terry's slides, it said, every customer situation is unique. And I'm wondering if it's possible that that premise could be checked. In other words, what if every customer situation is not unique? And so I, you know, being somewhat of a data related person, I'm wondering, has anyone ever looked at the data across the residences over time to look for patterns in the data, to look at what we're seeing now, that quite a significant number of residents now are reporting usage levels and things like that. And also, I know the rates went up, but it's a separate conversation. I want to keep the scope small here. Has anyone actually looked at the data to analyze it for trends and
30 seconds.
That's it.
Okay, so there were 2 questions and comments. The first one is in a better understanding of the system in place to address the issues that come up from the residents. And I think the the best thing for any resident who has a question on their bill is to reach out to Terry as a first step, because
Second step, try sometimes the tax office takes care of it and I don't have to deal with it at all. But if you're not able to reconcile it, or you still have questions, of course I'm available.
Yeah.
And I've spoken with Josephine before, so I'm sure she knows how to get me.
Right. But it sounds to me the bulk of these questions, Terry, from what I'm hearing tonight, are things that the tax office.
Yes, you're right. This level of the people who've already kind of been through the motions of kind of following it through. I was kind of joking. I just was.
Okay. So and Terry did give you her phone number, and it's easy to find anyway. So that's the first thing. And she could best describe this, the system for how these things are resolved. I think it was talked about a little bit before also, Josephine. But the question that I have to turn to Middlesex Water for is the data, a study of the data. We have been buying our water from you for a long time. And I'm wondering if there's any analysis of the water usage in Highland Park that we can then compare on a year-to-year basis. I think that's what Josephine was asking for. Are there trends? Is there something we should be aware of that we can communicate to residents? Is that something that Middlesex Water, I guess I'm looking at you, Bob, can put together for us?
Yes. Yeah, we do. We keep a running tally every month of how much water the borough purchases from Middlesex Water Company.
They actually meter read daily. I see when I get the bill, you see what the usage was every single day from both of those meter locations.
So maybe that's something you can share with Terry, and she can share with the governing body, and then we can put out to residents so that we can analyze, what's going on.
And I'll just say, we do look at the meter readings. I mean, we tend to look at it within each customer at first, because that's to resolve the meter, the billing process. But we do look at that. We look at what we bill versus what we used and versus what we bill, things like that over time. And as I indicated, so we have water loss in our system that we need to address. So,
and jumping into that, that at the end of the last quarter, I know Terry, you and I did go through that, the quarterly or monthly billings comparing 2020 to 2019, and did see an increase really during that March on period, and really upticking in kind of June, July. And that really coincides with the pandemic and more people staying home and working from home and things of that nature.
Not taking vacations too. That was another, I had talked to a couple, like, don't you usually take a 3-week vacation in the middle of the summer? Stuff like that. Yeah.
Exactly.
But anyway, so yes, I think the answer is yes, Mayor.
Okay, that would be good. It's 8:34 now. Is the panel willing to stay till 8:45, and we'll get a couple more questions? Thank you. Okay. So Terry, let's go till 8:45. Then anybody who does not get called on, please feel free to forward your questions to the borough administrator, and we'll get answers to you. So let's go on to the next.
Next up is Naomi Alman. Please just state your name and your address.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. Naomi Alman, 5 Harrison Avenue. I want to thank you, Mayor and Council, for having this meeting. It's much needed and much appreciated. So like Dan, Robin, Max, and Josephine, we got a bill that was quite a few thousand cubic feet above our normal usage. I'm one person home during the day. My husband is not home during the day. He's out of the house. The usage is not increased. In fact, last year we do have a pool, and last year we drained the pool and filled it for repairs. And it was still not more than 6,000 and change cubic feet. We were away almost a full month for this quarter, and in August, and there's no leak. We did call a plumber. There's no problem with the toilets. We've had the plumber check check it quite thoroughly. And our bill was over $1,000. It was over 8,000 cubic feet for the quarter. It's just not possible. So now we're talking about data. We've had 2 people from the north side of town, 2 people from the south side. I'm the third from the north side. There is a systemic problem. It's not the toilets. It's not the age of the house. And the feeling that I received was like, oh, well, it's got to be your problem. We don't want to deal with it. And that's not acceptable. And I want to know, we're at a point now, and I'm sure there are about 30, 40 people behind me who are going to have a same or similar story. We want to know, I want to know, what are you going to do? $1,000 for a quarter when we're away for a third of that quarter is not acceptable. It's just not. I mean, you're talking usurious fees and rates. It's not sustainable.
Okay, so the first thing that I would say is anyone who has a question on their bills, the best thing to do so that she can address it while she's looking at the history is to reach out again to the borough administrator. She may put you through to the water tax department.
I did both.
I'll say, Mayor, that most of the folks we've heard from, I've spoken with.
Oh, okay. Okay. So the first thing that we have to do is look at not everybody is talking to us about this. We need to know if there are issues. If there are issues in any particular address, the only way we can look at this is by looking at the individual addresses to see what's going on. Unless somebody has a different answer, I don't know how to get to the bottom of this without knowing specifics.
Okay, I will tell you we were on an old meter, and with that old meter, which if that was the slow version, I would hate to see what the fast version is. But I'm not the only one. We're not the only 5. It's a borough-wide issue, and it has to be addressed. I don't think it's Middlesex water. I think it's within the borough. And I think there has to be a serious due diligence to try and really get to the bottom of where this issue is. And it has to be a little bit more than, a surface or pro forma kind of investigation.
Okay. So, Council President, this is in your bucket. Maybe you and the borough administrator can address this.
Mayor, let me just say, especially Terry had referred to the Executive Order 190, which came out on October 16th, went into full effect on November 16th. I had been evaluating the complaints that were coming in. It's basically what we're hearing now are complaints from the second quarter's billing. And we're talking about the third quarter is coming up, is coming up. I had the same problem last year with the fourth quarter and raised the issue. My bill, as you know, when we did the very first study that we ever did about water usage to see how we could design a new system was to evaluate the water usage of the council members. And being ecologically minded, mine was the lowest. But I then got my bill and it was $1,000 where it was $150. And I had the borough come in, I had the Middlesex water come in, I had a plumber come in, I had the water gentleman from the borough just before Middlesex water took over come in. I went down in the manhole on Johnson Street right outside my driveway when they opened it up to look for myself, and it turned out that I visited my family in New Orleans and my sister in San Antonio, and I had washed my car before I left, put it in the garage, and didn't realize that something called a bonnet, which is a little seal on the top of the outside valve, leaked, even though I have the automatic shutoff, was leaking and ran up a bill of $700 of water in 2 weeks. That being said, when I think about this issue, I've thought about some forensics based on representing other utilities, water and sewer utilities, that we may be able to do that are minimal or no cost, that we should talk about as we go forward to try and put into place to see if in fact there is some kind of a problem. There are enough complaints that I think it might be worth talking about, and I'll bring that up at the Public Works meeting in December when I put a little more thought into it. I think there are ways that we can look at that beyond saying that, we check the house for leaks. But the bottom line is, as Middlesex Water has said, if the meter is accurate and then the reading that we're getting indicates a usage of water. And the question is that translating incorrectly, or is it reading incorrectly? And I think there are some no-cost ways that we can look at that and try and get an answer. I don't know that we can get it for the third quarter or maybe even the fourth, but I think that going forward, we can see that. I also, as Terry has said, with the billings coming in, I do want to see if that issue flattens out a bit with third quarter billings. There's a big difference between second and third quarter and third and fourth quarter water usage. The normal household changes usage. It doesn't matter whether one person lives at home by themselves or a family of 6. The pattern is the same for the people that inhabit. And we know that those patterns change simply because the normal usage of a home and living in it changes, and the experiences across the board. And as Jan and Bob have explained to us over and over again, we see those. So I'll bring that up to Public Works in December with some suggestions. I'd like to move forward on that in listening to the stories. And again, I do represent other utilities in my business life, and I have some thoughts as to how we can come up with a plan to evaluate this in 2021 by looking at both the numbers and the usages. It's a problem of both with accurate meters, and so we need to figure out if there's a pattern that we need to fix, or if something else is wrong, or whether it's right. We just don't know at this point. And Terry and the tax office are doing a great job of spot repairs, and trying to work on it. I did the food color test, and I did the watching the water meter test for a week straight. So I know what everybody's going through. So I'd like to see if we can come up with something that may give us a bigger picture again. On a no or low cost basis, simply by watching and seeing what's going on.
Thank you, Phil. Okay, so we have time for one more question.
Looks like Michael Dewhurst. You're last but not least. Please just state your name and address.
Hi, I'm Michael Dewhurst, 188 Dartmouth Street in the Triangle. I'm listening to all this stuff, and it definitely sounds like there's Josephine and Naomi were talking, I guess it was, about it's a data thing, right? How many households do we have? And if you have this many people saying their water bills are astronomically higher than they were the previous quarter or the previous year, that's a systemic problem across the board with the town. That's not someone leaving their tap running or having a toilet run or something like that. If there's that many people with bad toilets in this town, that's pretty sad, right? And so my question is I think we really need to, again, look at that data. We need to look at all the households. There's probably people that aren't even on this call that got a bill and just paid it, right? And then the other question I have is, I have an older meter with the meter outside. How accurate is that connection from that older meter to that electronic connection outside? And the PSE&G, I believe, reads that meter, right? Is that correct?
The Borough reads those meters.
Borough reads it. Mm-hmm. Were they coming around during COVID reading that meter, or were there assumptions made?
No, it would indicate an estimate on your bill if it was
Okay.
had to be estimated due to not being able to. Some people, if they have a dog in the yard or something,
Okay.
the guys
Yeah.
so those would be actual readings. And the issue of just to be clear, and I've had to learn this myself. That we call it a remote that's on the outside of the house. That's not a meter. It's just a readout of the meter that's actually in the basement. So it's not like there's two things taking count, but it's supposed to communicate. There have been instances where the outside meter has slowed down, and we didn't catch it right away because we just plod along. It slows down. I'll just tell you that. But the inside meter reading governs, and sometimes at some point the drop off, it catches our attention. We'll ask for an inside read, and we'll catch that we have underbilled the home. And in those cases, we've tried to work with people on that because we understand that we own some of the not finding it soon enough. But the way that works is usually the opposite of the outside remote tends to fail slow down. We do catch it, and one way you can check it yourself if you're curious is to take the reading outside and go to your basement and take the reading inside, and if they're way off, please report it. We can't see inside your basement to be able to do that ourselves. So that's something that we can check on, and we have encountered that. But the meter, it doesn't indicate that the meter inside is failing. I just want to make that clear.
Sure. But what about can we do a survey? Can we find out from the town what's the number? Like, what are we, 3,400 residents or households approximately? Somewhere around there?
We have 3,400 accounts about.
Okay, so out of those accounts, is 10% people complaining?
No, I would. It's hard for me to know because I'm not in the tax office taking all those calls. I'm taking a small portion of those calls. I think the better way to look at it is I think we do have data on all the readings, and we'll take a closer look. But I would not say we were overwhelmed. And a lot of folks like myself, my bill is pretty consistent. It's been pretty consistent. So it's not everybody. I guess I just want to make sure that that's clear, that we're not dealing with necessarily, I'm not saying you guys aren't having the experience and you're having a similar one, in your discussions, but I wouldn't say, I don't know if we have a statistically significant number, because like you said, not everybody's calling, to your point, but the flip side I would say is not everybody's calling. So there are some folks, and so we're going to look at the numbers. That's the best we can do. But with 3,400 accounts and with quarterly fluctuations and changes in tenancy and all sorts of things that occur, there's going to be variation. So finding the patterns is difficult. And so that's why when I was saying it's a case by case, because we really have to look at what's going on in that household. Because I agree, if your bill doubles, triples, and you, as far as you know, didn't do anything differently, it's warrants looking at. And that's what we do. And so, yes, the data matters, but we also have to know that there are fluctuations by account that happen, and we have to accept. And if the meters check, we have an obligation to all the folks in the system to bill accordingly, because that's water that is used as far as we can tell to our best ability. So that's the challenge, but I don't say that not to say I'm not listening, but I'm just trying to give you the other side of the equation that we're dealing with.
I've been a resident for almost 20 years, right? I'm actually one less person in my house than I was. And then I'm used to seeing incremental jumps, right? During the quarter, or like in the summer, it's slightly higher because I maybe water my lawn or things like that. But this was a significant jump for me. And there's less people in my house.
Yeah,
I hear you.
So it's
you're probably the only one I haven't spoken to yet. So.
You're right, exactly right. I just did it.
So I'll look you up, and you have my info, and you can reach out to me. Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. It's almost 9. I'm going to ask anyone else who has any questions to please get those questions to Terry, and we will get answers to the questions, and I think we'll figure out some way to answer publicly so that other folks who have similar situations can see the responses. I want to thank Middlesex Water for volunteering to get us that data that was asked for. It'll be helpful to take a look at that. But to Terry's point also, you know, the reason why she needs the addresses is because we do find when investigations happen that there are usually individual situations, as Council President Phil George indicated with his particular situation. So at this point, I want to thank everyone who came out tonight. And I want to thank the folks from Middlesex Water, our council president, and our borough administrator who've been working very hard to come to the bottom of what this situation is, but also in preparing our infrastructure for the future. So thank you all, and good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Everyone be safe and well.
Thank you,
and have
Emma,
a good
for
Thanksgiving
sticking with
holiday.
us. See you
Thank you.
tomorrow.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.